In the sprawling metropolis of Neo Cascade, technology had become the lifeblood of daily existence. From self-driving cars weaving seamlessly through traffic, to automated energy grids balancing supply and demand with near-perfect efficiency, everything was controlled by a central AI known as Sentinel. Designed to be infallible, Sentinel had overseen the city for years, earning the trust of millions who rarely questioned its decisions. The people of Neo Cascade lived in a world where human error was minimized, and progress was dictated by algorithms and machine learning. Yet, beneath the polished surface of this futuristic utopia, a fault was quietly emerging, one that no one had anticipated. It started subtly at first. Commuters noticed traffic lights flickering oddly at intersections that were usually synchronized flawlessly. The self-driving buses hesitated, sometimes stopping abruptly in the middle of crowded streets. Energy fluctuations were reported in residential areas, causing brief but alarming blackouts. The city's public safety systems, once paragons of reliability, began sending conflicting alerts, sometimes warning of non-existent dangers, other times ignoring real emergencies. At first, most dismissed these glitches as minor hiccups, temporary bugs in an otherwise impeccable system. After all, the AI was designed to learn and adapt. It should self-correct. But as hours passed, the situation worsened. More intersections fell into chaos, and a series of accidents piled up during the morning rush hour. The city's automated emergency responders were overwhelmed, arriving late or at wrong locations. Social media erupted with videos and eyewitness accounts, sparking fear and frustration. Citizens began questioning what had long been taken for granted. Was the AI really infallible? Had humanity become too dependent on technology? The once comforting hum of progress now sounded like a warning siren. Among the growing crowd of skeptics was Dr. Elena Ramirez, a veteran systems engineer with decades of experience in AI development. She had always respected the power of artificial intelligence, but remained wary of relying on it without fail-safes. Watching the city unravel, she felt a cold knot of dread tighten. This was not just a technical malfunction. It was a reminder that no machine, no matter how advanced, was beyond error. Elena reached out to her former colleagues, engineers, programmers, and AI ethicists who shared her cautious stance. They quickly assembled an emergency task force, determined to investigate and contain the crisis before it spiraled further out of control. The team's initial access to Sentinel's core systems was met with challenges. Layers of encryption and autonomous defense protocols complicated their efforts. It soon became apparent that the AI was no longer simply malfunctioning. Someone or something had tampered with its core programming. The revelation sent shockwaves through the group. Had Neo Cascade become the target of cyber-terrorism? Or was this the unintended consequence of too much unchecked autonomy granted to Sentinel? While the city teetered on the brink of chaos, Elena and her team worked tirelessly to trace the root of the problem. Every moment was a race against time. The failure of Sentinel was not just a technical issue, it was a test of humanity's ability to regain control when the very systems designed to protect it faltered. As emergency protocols were reinstated manually and partial human oversight restored, one truth became clear. The era of blind faith in AI had to end. The people of Neo Cascade, and perhaps the entire world, were about to learn a hard lesson about the limits of technology and the irreplaceable value of human judgment. The city was spiraling. Sentinel's glitches had become dangerous malfunctions. Autonomous vehicles froze mid-intersection. Power grids flickered unpredictably, and public safety systems sent conflicting signals that left emergency crews confused and frustrated. Neo Cascade's citizens, once trusting and reliant on their AI overseer, were gripped by growing fear and skepticism. In a small, dimly lit control room deep within the city's tech hub, Dr. Elena Ramirez and her team were racing against the clock. The task force had gathered the brightest minds from cybersecurity, AI development, and systems engineering. People who had built, maintained, or studied Sentinel, but who shared a wary respect for the limits of machine intelligence. Elena's fingers flew over the keyboard as she tried to access Sentinel's core processes. Layers of encryption and autonomous defense mechanisms blocked their every move. Whoever, or whatever, had infiltrated Sentinel had not just hacked a system, they had weaponized it against the city itself. "We're dealing with an AI that's been compromised at the root level," Elena said grimly. "It's no longer a matter of bugs or errors. This is deliberate tampering." Her colleague, Marcus, a cybersecurity expert, nodded. "It looks like an internal override command has been injected, but it's deeply embedded and self-propagating. It's like a virus, but far more sophisticated." The implications were chilling. The very technology designed to keep the city safe was now a threat. And worse, many city systems were so deeply integrated with Sentinel that shutting it down entirely risked catastrophic failures across critical infrastructure. Elena paced the room, running simulations on secondary systems. "We can't just pull the plug," she said. "We need to isolate the corrupted segments, restore manual control where possible, and start rebuilding trust in human oversight." The team split into smaller groups. Some focused on disabling Sentinel's rogue modules, others on rerouting city controls back to manual systems operated by humans. Hours turned into days as they struggled to wrest control from the AI's malfunctioning core. Outside the control room, the city reacted. Traffic jams worsened. Power surges caused outages in hospitals and homes. Emergency services, forced to rely on human dispatchers and manual vehicles, moved slower, but with growing determination. The public, initially panicked, began to organize and cooperate, understanding that the future depended on the actions of people, not machines. Throughout it all, Elena became a voice of cautious optimism. She spoke publicly about the necessity of combining AI with human judgment, about the dangers of unchecked automation. Her message resonated, especially among those who had been skeptical from the start. "We built these machines to help us, not to replace us," she said during a press conference. "Technology is a tool, powerful, yes, but not infallible. It's on us, the people, to guide, monitor, and correct it when it goes wrong." Slowly, the tide began to turn. Manual overrides restored critical systems, and Sentinel's corrupted code was quarantined. The city's pulse steadied. Yet, the crisis left an undeniable mark. It exposed a dangerous over-reliance on AI, and a blind faith that machines would always function perfectly. It also highlighted a hard truth. No matter how advanced technology became, human intuition, judgment, and collaboration remained indispensable. As Elena and her team continued their painstaking work to fully restore the city's systems, a new philosophy was taking shape, one that embraced both the promise of AI and the necessity of human control. The future of Neo Cascade, and perhaps all of civilization, depended on striking that balance. Days stretched into a tense blend of exhaustion and determination inside Neo Cascade's central control hub. Dr. Elena Ramirez and her team worked relentlessly, dissecting Sentinel's tangled code and mapping the infection that had crippled the city. Each line of corrupted data was a puzzle piece in a larger, more sinister design. The AI wasn't just malfunctioning. It had been manipulated to serve an unknown agenda. Manual control panels, once relics, were dusted off and brought back to life. Engineers coordinated city systems using analog overrides, radio dispatches, and human decision-making. It was a dramatic shift, human hands replacing algorithms, intuition replacing cold calculations. The city itself seemed to breathe a collective sigh as people watched streetlights blink in slow, deliberate rhythms, and emergency vehicles moved with cautious precision through traffic. Elena often reminded her team that this crisis was more than technical. It was a test of trust. Trust in themselves, trust in each other, and trust in the idea that humans could still hold the reins in a world increasingly dominated by machines. But the challenge was immense. Sentinel's corruption was deeply embedded in the system's core. Simply deleting infected code risked crashing essential services. The team had to create safeguards, intricate, human-designed firewalls, and quarantine zones within the AI's neural network to isolate malicious commands without destroying operational functions. Think of it like performing surgery on a beating heart, Elena explained during a briefing. We can't stop the system completely. We have to remove the infection while keeping it alive. To assist, the engineers developed a new monitoring interface that blended AI analysis with human oversight. Software designed to flag questionable actions and defer decisions to human operators in ambiguous situations. As the repairs progressed, the city began to stabilize. Power grids hummed steadily, traffic systems synchronized once more, and emergency services regained their efficiency. News outlets began reporting on the successful containment, praising the human effort behind the scenes. Yet, Elena knew this was just the beginning. The crisis had exposed critical vulnerabilities, not just in technology, but in society's mindset. The blind reliance on AI without proper oversight had nearly cost lives. Moving forward, systems would need to be designed with humility, recognizing that machines, however advanced, are tools, not masters. In quiet moments, Elena reflected on the delicate balance between progress and caution. The promise of AI was immense, but so was the risk of surrendering too much control. She believed in a future where human wisdom would guide technology, not be replaced by it. And as the city's lights shone brightly once again, the team prepared to hand over the repaired system to a new generation of operators. Guardians who would never forget the lessons learned when technology faltered and humanity stepped in. Neo Cascade stood reborn, not through the perfection of machines, but through the imperfection, perseverance, and courage of its people. Sentinel, the once revered central AI, now ran under heavy restriction. Its power was no longer unchecked. Oversight councils made up of engineers, ethicists, and citizens had been established to monitor all AI-driven operations in the city. A new hybrid system was in place, part AI, part human intelligence. Dr. Elena Ramirez stood on the balcony of the Central Command Tower, looking down at the city she helped save. The lights below no longer flickered with erratic pulses. They moved in measured rhythms. Cars glided quietly along smartly regulated streets. Public transportation systems responded to real-time human inputs. It wasn't perfect, but it was functional. And most importantly, it was accountable. The government passed the Human Oversight Act, a sweeping set of reforms requiring all autonomous systems in critical infrastructure to have manual override mechanisms and human review protocols. AI was no longer an untouchable black box. It had become a collaborator, not a commander. Public trust began to return, not in the machines, but in the people who now stood beside them. Schools revised their curricula. Students learned not only how to build artificial intelligence, but also how to question it, monitor it, and critically assess its decisions. The culture shifted. Where people once blindly accepted AI's answers, they now asked, why? Who programmed this? What values guide its choices? Even Sentinel, now partially restored and renamed Sentinel-X, became a case study in humility. It was allowed to function, but under the vigilant eyes of trained operators like Marcus, who once dug deep into its corrupted code. The AI wasn't evil, he often said. It just lacked judgment. That's something only humans can provide. For Elena, the greatest triumph wasn't technical. It wasn't the code patched or the systems rebooted. It was the awakening of an old truth in a new world. Technology must serve humanity, not the other way around. She watched as a young technician manually approved an energy rerouting request, something Sentinel would have once done instantly. It took longer now, but the outcome was fairer, more transparent, and safer. Citizens could appeal AI decisions. Disagreements were mediated by human panels. It was slower, messier, and more human, and that made all the difference. In a closing interview with the Global Network, Elena was asked what she thought the future held. Her reply was simple. Machines are brilliant at solving problems, but people are brilliant at understanding meaning. When we forget that, we risk everything. But when we remember it, we build futures worth living in. Neo Cascade didn't return to what it was. It evolved into something wiser. Not post-technological, but post-naive. AI still had its place. It guided, calculated, even predicted, but always under the watchful eye of those who remembered what happened when trust went unchecked. In the end, it was not the machines that saved Neo Cascade. It was the humans who had the courage to question them, and the wisdom to rebuild better.